I'm Nadia, and this case has never made sense to me. In November of 1970, in a valley outside Bergen, Norway, a man and his two young daughters found a woman's body burned beyond recognition. When the police cataloged what was left of her belongings, every label had been cut from her clothing, every tag, every manufacturer's mark on every object scraped clean. She had checked into hotel after hotel under 8 different names. Not one of them was hers. And in 55 years, no government, no agency, no family has ever come forward to claim her. The case opened on November 29, 1970. A man and his 2 young daughters were hiking in a remote valley outside Bergen, a place the locals called Isdal, the Ice Valley. What they found was a woman's body, face and upper body burned beyond recognition, lying among the rocks. Around her, police cataloged bottles of liqueur and melted plastic water containers, an umbrella, rubber boots, a purse, a matchbox. And beneath her body, a fur hat. When forensics tested it, they found traces of petrol. Her jewelry had been carefully removed and arranged beside the body. Tormod Bones, one of the original forensic investigators, told the BBC the placement looked less like a death scene and more like a ceremony. 3 days later, police recovered 2 suitcases at the Bergen railway station. Inside, every label on every garment had been cut away. Every mark scraped clean. The name on her tube of eczema cream scratched off with a blade. And 3 weeks after the discovery, before the questions had even settled, Bergen police stood in front of the press and announced their conclusion: suicide. But here is the detail that stops every serious investigator. Inside her suitcases, police found wigs, 2 pairs of glasses, both with clear, non-prescription lenses, cosmetics with the labels rubbed off. And in the lining of one case, 500 German marks hidden. Hotel registration cards, filled out in her own handwriting, gave her 8 different names. Geneviève Lancier from Louvain, Claudia Tielt from Brussels, Alexia Zarn Merchez, Fenella Lork, Vera Jarle. Not one of them traced back to a real person. In the 8 months before her death, she had moved through Oslo, Stavanger, Bergen, Trondheim, and then, under another name, across Europe, Paris, Geneva. When Norwegian detectives tried to follow her trail abroad, higher authorities ordered them to stop. In one of her suitcases, a notepad, pages of handwritten code, letters and numbers ordered in groups. When detectives finally cracked it, the code turned out to be a record of her own movements, written so that only she could read it. The hotel staff who had seen her described her the same way. Fluent in German, French, and Flemish. Poor English. She paid in cash. She changed rooms after checking in. She was calm, composed, and always on guard. This was not a woman who walked into a valley to die. And what Bergen's forensic team preserved from her autopsy? A single piece of her jaw, locked away for 46 years, would eventually place her, by chemistry alone, on a map. The autopsy was carried out at the Gades Institute in Bergen, and what it found made the official conclusion harder to accept, not easier. Her stomach held between 50 and 70 sleeping pills. Phenomol, a prescription barbiturate. But the pills hadn't fully dissolved into her bloodstream. 12 more were found beside her body. There was soot in her lungs, which means she was still breathing when the flames started. And her neck was bruised, possibly from a fall, possibly from a blow. 50 pills. Petrol on her hat, a bruised neck, and a woman still breathing when she burned. Does that sound like a suicide to you? or a scene built to look like one. Police traced her final weeks. In Stavanger, 120 miles south of Bergen, a shop assistant remembered her clearly. He had sold her a pair of rubber boots, the same boots found beside her body. He described her as well-dressed, dark-haired, careful. Her English was poor, and he remembered one strange detail, a peculiar scent, possibly garlic. A waitress remembered her too, dining beside two German naval personnel, one of them an officer. Nobody recorded what was said. Her last confirmed sighting was November 23rd, Hotel Hordeheimen, Bergen, room 407. Staff said she seemed on guard. She stayed in her room. She paid in cash. She asked for a taxi. And then, for 6 days, nothing. 6 days between the checkout and the valley. No witness puts her anywhere. Where was she? Who was she with? The file has never answered either question. There is one account. A local professor claimed he saw her on the trail into Isdalen days before her death, walking ahead of two men, following her. The police never publicly confirmed it. The men were never identified. There's a document coming that almost no one outside Norway has read, and it changes how this entire case looks. The vault stays open. The next file is already on the table. For 46 years, the case sat closed. Then, in 2016, journalists at Norway's national broadcaster started asking questions. They learned that during the original autopsy, the woman's jaw had been removed because her dental work was unlike anything seen in Norway. For decades, everyone assumed it had been destroyed. It hadn't. A forensic professor found it in a cellar deep in the archives of a Bergen hospital. That jaw reopened the case. DNA traced her ancestry to Western continental Europe. And in 2017, isotope analysis, reading the chemical signature locked into her teeth as they formed, placed her childhood on a map. She was born around 1930, near Nuremberg, Germany. And as a child, she moved to France, or the border between them. It matched what handwriting experts had said about her hotel cards decades earlier. She wrote like someone educated in France. A girl born in Germany around 1930, raised across a border, fluent in 3 languages. It tells us where she began. It still doesn't tell us who she was. And then it gets stranger. Declassified records from the Norwegian Armed Forces show that her movements lined up, city for city, with something Norway was hiding. The Penguin Missile. A top-secret weapons program under trial on the coast, near the very towns where she kept checking in under false names. A fisherman in Stavanger claimed he saw a woman matching her description, watching military movements. Defense researchers stayed in the same hotels she did. None of it was ever proven. Norwegian police could never connect her to espionage, officially. But years later, officers from the original investigation admitted something remarkable. Almost none of them had believed the suicide ruling. Not the detectives, not the forensic team. Not once in the file does the evidence sit comfortably with the conclusion. So here is what remains. A woman with 8 names and none. A childhood written in her teeth. A coded notebook. A bruised neck. Petrol on her hat. And a government file that closed in 3 weeks, then stayed silent for half a century. In February 1971, the city of Bergen buried her in an unmarked grave. They placed her in a zinc coffin, chosen deliberately so that her body would be preserved, in case her family ever came to claim her. They never came. Case file, Archive X. Status, unresolved.